What does it mean to be truly divine in a world where desires often lead the human heart astray? Can a life guided by simple wisdom and compassion be more radiant than the grandest displays of wealth or power? Perhaps it is hard to accept such an idea at first, especially in an age where what glitters catches the eye more readily than what is hidden quietly within. Yet, there is a timeless teaching that might illuminate this question. It begins, not today, but long ago, as a compassionate teacher sought to guide a follower who had strayed. On a peaceful day, beneath the shade of ancient trees, the Buddha gathered with his community of followers. Among them was a wealthy monk who, despite having renounced his worldly life, still clung to the comforts of the world he had left behind. This monk possessed an abundance of robes, bedding, and other necessities, far beyond what the simple life of a monk required. He had grown complacent, drifting into habits of indulgence rather than embracing the quiet virtues of renunciation. There was a restlessness in him, a tension that prevented him from understanding the core of the Buddha's teaching. The Buddha observed this monk with kind but discerning eyes. The teacher noticed how the monk, though ordained, could not find contentment. He saw that the man had not yet understood what true virtue demanded. The Buddha chose to guide him, not by direct admonition, but by sharing a memory from ages past, a recollection of a life lived under different names, when kingdoms rose and fell beneath bright skies, and when a single act of moral insight was worth more than any number of possessions. Before the community, the Buddha spoke in gentle tones. He introduced the question that would guide their reflection. Was it possible that what seemed divine and worthy in the eyes of the world might not be so at all, and that true divinity arose instead from moral purity, restraint, and compassion? He promised to reveal this truth through an ancient tale, one rooted in his own past life, to show how understanding the nature of the divine could bring freedom from needless attachment. In a time long past, when forests stretched endlessly beneath wide skies and kingdoms flourished beside great rivers, there was a king who ruled the city of Benares. This king had 3 sons. The eldest was thoughtful and kind, gifted with a natural sense of virtue. The middle son carried a quiet wisdom like the glow of a steady candle. The youngest, bright and hopeful, followed his older brothers faithfully. Life in the palace seemed secure, yet beneath the surface, turmoil brewed. The youngest prince's mother held a boon once promised to her by the king. She intended to make her son inherit the throne, disregarding the rightful order. The king found himself torn between his promise and the tradition that favored the eldest son. Afraid that refusing the queen would put the older princes in danger, he confessed his troubles to them. He urged the 2 elder brothers to depart from the city until the day he no longer ruled, promising that when the time was right, they would return and reign with wisdom. The 2 elder princes saw the sorrow in their father's eyes. Although it pained them to leave their home, they valued life and virtue above any throne. They departed in silence, stepping beyond the city gates into the tranquil embrace of the forest. Yet, as they passed beneath towering trees, a familiar voice called out. The youngest brother, unwilling to be left behind, followed them. He had learned about loyalty and love, and he could not bear the separation. The 3 brothers proceeded deeper into the green wilderness, away from palace luxuries, determined to sustain themselves on what the forest offered. As they wandered, they came upon a hidden pool. Tall trees shaded its surface, and lotus blossoms floated gently. The water seemed inviting, clear, and cool. The eldest brother, sensing no immediate danger, asked the youngest to bring him a drink. The youngest prince stepped toward the pool, cupped his hands, and bent down. Yet the moment he touched the water, a chill passed through him. It was a mysterious spirit, a being trapped by its own past misdeeds. This water spirit had been granted dominion over any who entered the water, but would spare those who understood the true nature of the divine. Centuries of feeding on ignorance had shaped its existence, and it hungered for those who did not grasp genuine morality. The youngest prince felt the spirit's silent question press upon his mind. It demanded to know what was truly divine, urging him to prove his understanding. Frightened, the young prince thought only of grand things. Perhaps the sun or the moon must be divine, he reasoned. But his reasoning, though well-meaning, did not touch on the essence of moral purity. The spirit, displeased, seized the boy and held him captive beneath the water. Time passed, and when the youngest brother did not return, the eldest prince sent the middle brother to find him. The middle brother followed the same path, reaching the pool's edge, bending down for water. He too felt the spirit's presence and its relentless question. Searching his mind, he named distant horizons and the directions that embraced the world, thinking these fundamental aspects might be truly divine. But once more, this response drifted far from the heart of morality and virtue. The spirit again showed no mercy, holding the middle brother captive as well. The eldest prince, left alone beneath the forest canopy, grew worried. He imagined that something ominous lay hidden in that tranquil pool. Approaching carefully, he saw no sign of his brothers. A heavy silence weighed on the place. Unlike his younger siblings, he did not rush into the water. He guessed that a trial awaited him. He recalled the teachings of wise elders and the importance of genuine goodness. He understood that what the world calls divine might be nothing more than external splendor. True divinity, he realized, was found in the purity of one's heart. Those who refused to commit wrong, who sought no harm to others, embodied what could rightly be called divine. As he stood at the water's edge, he formed this understanding clearly in his mind. It was the recognition that moral goodness, not external grandeur, was the hallmark of the truly divine. The water spirit sensed the prince's realization. This was the answer it had been seeking across countless encounters. Moved, the spirit chose to release both captive brothers. It emerged, no longer only a creature of darkness and hunger, but as a being capable of reflection and transformation. The prince, relieved to have his brothers back, spoke calmly to the spirit, though always indirectly, through kind intentions and gentle persuasion. He made it known that violence and harm were rooted in past ignorance. By embracing moral purity and ceasing to feed on the unsuspecting, the spirit might escape an endless cycle of suffering. Hearing this, the spirit was stirred. It considered a new path, guided by compassion rather than cruelty. In time, the news reached the brothers that their father had passed away. The eldest understood that to honor tradition and ensure the kingdom's well-being, he must return. He journeyed back to Benares, accompanied by his siblings, and no longer threatened by the queen's ambitions. The spirit from the forest pool, now an ally touched by understanding, was granted a quiet refuge near the palace. There, it received flowers and kind words, not out of fear, but out of recognition that a once harmful being could change when guided by moral truth. With the eldest brother as king, Benares flourished. He appointed the middle brother to wise stewardship, and the youngest, once so fearful, matured into a compassionate leader. The spirit lived near them peacefully, never again harming another. Having discovered the root of true divinity, they ruled and lived according to moral principles. Thus, the world was offered an example that true divinity lives within a heart free from wrongdoing and greed. Nothing was more radiant than a mind cleansed of harmful impulses. As the Buddha's voice carried this ancient tale, he allowed his followers to reflect. The wealthy monk listened closely, witnessing through the story how a prince's understanding of moral virtue overcame danger and transformed a fearful being into an ally. He realized that grasping the nature of what was truly divine did not mean clinging to comforts and objects that pleased only the senses.
True divinity was found when a person freed themselves from inner impurities, living simply and kindly, helping others, and refusing to yield to harmful impulses. The Buddha, noting the change in the monk's demeanor, concluded the lesson as subtly as he had begun it. He evoked the memory of the elder prince who had answered the spirit's silent question. He reminded the gathered listeners that one's possessions, status, or even knowledge of grand cosmic wonders would never equal the moral radiance of a calm, virtuous heart. This was the true path to spiritual awakening, an inner state unclouded by greed or fear. The monk realized that by divesting himself of unnecessary belongings, he could begin to reflect the truth he had just learned. A person did not need to wear fine robes to be truly regal, nor did one need gold to be truly rich. Just as the forest pool spirit learned that doing harm leads only to further suffering, the monk now understood that clinging to luxury invited restless longing rather than peace.
Those who listened to the Buddha's words needed no intricate knowledge of philosophy or religion. They only needed to open their hearts to the notion that human goodness and the refusal to harm are qualities that transcend place and time. By understanding this, a listener could feel enlightened and liberated, regardless of their origins. As the Buddha concluded the teaching, his followers grasped the central truth. Just as the eldest prince learned in the forest that true divinity lies in moral purity, they too could embody that principle in their everyday lives. It mattered little whether one was a monk or a householder, a student or a ruler. What mattered was to cultivate a heart that delighted in kindness, mercy, and restraint. The answer, illuminated by ancient memory and current need, was that by embodying moral purity, by refraining from harming others, by acting kindly, by placing virtue above vanity, one awakened a goodness deeper and more enduring than any external splendor.